Hi, welcome to Film Lovers. My name's Sonia Chung. We'll be talking to people who work in the industry and who are also avid film lovers. As promised, we promised an episode 2 with Tom Jolliffe as we enjoyed the last episode so much. Hi, Tom. How are you today?
Hi, Sonia. I'm very good and I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, we really enjoyed last time, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We sort of went on off a few tangents, but it was okay.
We got a bit carried away, didn't we?
Yeah.
Went on for about an hour. So we thought today would have a special theme. We'll be talking about foreign films today, won't we?
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. So I love a lot of world cinema.
Do you know what? To be honest, I need to start watching a lot more because I'm also dyslexic. So what I worry about is that the subtitles might go too fast if it's a very kind of fast-paced film, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
and
it
some can
varies.
be quite dialogue heavy, can't they? So it can be difficult.
Yeah. So I guess we should let's start off by asking what your top 5 foreign films are, and then we can take it from there, really.
Okay, so I'm not sure
Number
about.
5.
Okay, no particular order, but I'll make one
Okay.
suggestion
Oh,
because
you don't have an order.
I know you'll probably like this one. So Amelie.
Oh, yes, I was going to mention Emily. I love Emily so much.
Yeah, I
So
thought you
that's
might
not
like
you're
that one.
not got like a top 5. You're just going to say your favorite ones, are
I've
you?
just got a kind of a random list of just
Yeah,
ones that I love.
yeah, I have as well. It's quite hard to put them in order
Yeah,
compared
no, I
to
always
make.
have problems doing that.
So what? So why is Emily one of your favorites?
I think because at the time it came out, it was really kind of refreshing and a little bit different. It's quite quirky, isn't it?
Mm.
And yeah, very sort of quirky style of comedy, very visual. And again, it's one of those. There's not masses of dialogue in it, so it is quite quite easy to follow.
It's also quite slow, isn't it? Like when the
Yeah,
narrative is talk, when not the narrative, the narrator is talking as well. Um, but yeah, it's not that hard to follow subtitles wise. And also, my mother's French, so I can pick up bits of it anyway. Um, so it's not that bad. Um, what stood out for you? I mean, it's quite original for the time, wasn't it? There was nothing else like it, so it really sort of stood out when it came out.
yeah. I mean, it was such a big hit around the world, whereas normally, films out of Europe or anywhere else, they don't always travel too well across sort of
No.
UK and America. But this one traveled really well, and I think it's because it's so visual as well. I mean,
Mm.
yeah,
And that
it's a
kick-started her career, really, didn't it? I mean, she was
yeah,
obviously a very famous French actress before in France, but then when that film came out and it was like a world hit, then that obviously opened up doors for her to go into the mainstream Hollywood because she did the Da Vinci Code, didn't she, afterwards? And
yeah,
she's done a few other ones as well. So what else were you going to say about it?
yeah. I just it has a great soundtrack in it. It's really
Mm.
kind of charming as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really
No,
easy to watch because it's really charming, dramatic, funny, and quite
I like.
relatable as well, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, and also I like the fact that she's kind of an introvert, isn't she?
Yeah,
But she sort of takes it upon herself to go and fix everyone's problems, and she's a bit like a modern day genie in a way. But the funny thing is that while she's busy doing all of that and making everyone else's dreams come true, she can't seem to pluck up the courage to ask the guy out that she really likes. So, and obviously she grew up basically by herself, didn't she? She was homeschooled by her father.
so she's introverted, but she's also very kind of socially awkward at the same time.
She's very sweet, I think. She's very kind of childlike. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
I think that's
think
what
that
makes her quite endearing, though.
yeah, that's what makes I think everyone every time you say that like have you seen Emily? Do you like that film? And everyone kind of goes, well, I don't know everyone, but I know for me, I go like I just kind of automatically go like that. It's just such a nice film. You know what I mean? It's not menacing. It's very sweet. It's kind of like a modern day fairy tale in a
Yeah, I
way.
think so. Yeah, and it wasn't the typical kind of film that I would have been into at the time as well. But I just think it, like you say, it had that ability to charm almost everyone who saw it.
Yeah. Was there anything? I tell you what, I did like. I liked when there's, because isn't there like a bit of a narrator at times, like at the opening, when he explains, how she was born, etc., etc., and he says basically like what the parents like and don't like. I like that bit. And there's one bit that stands out was when she grows up and she's so lonely that she starts imagining friends, and she gets a goldfish, and the goldfish becomes suicidal. And the mom can't take it anymore because the goldfish keeps jumping out of the bowl. So she has like a sob. She's like, so free. She's had enough. So basically, they chuck the fish into the pond or whatever. So that's really sad for her. But yeah, I think I like that at the end that she finds. I can't remember how she meets him. He comes to her in the end, doesn't he?
Yeah, and then she almost sort of chickens out of opening the door to meet him.
Yeah, I can't remember how that came about, but I do remember she dresses up as Zorro, and and he's like, "This is you, isn't it?" Oh yeah, because she leaves a note to come and meet her at the cafe, and then she kind of chickens out, and he's like, "This is you," isn't it? And she's like, "No." But no, it is very sweet. So anything else you want to say about it?
No, should we do another one?
Yeah, go on to your other favorite foreign film.
Okay, so I'll flip this completely and do something completely different in tone. So I love sort of Italian horror films, like the classical kind of era. So
they're
one of
very
those,
gory, aren't they?
They can be, yeah. But also,
I mean, to be honest, I haven't seen any Italian cinema, but I mean, I remember watching a top 100 scariest moments of cinema.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few Italian horror films in there in the countdown, and they're really, really graphic. Like, really, like I think there was one with, I mean, you might know this, where there's people in a cinema, and then these zombies start attacking people in a cinema and eating their flesh and stuff. What was that film called? I mean, that's really gory.
That's called Demons. So so that's a really good one. Probably my favorite is Suspiria.
Oh yeah, you like Suspiria. I've heard of it, and I've seen that was also in the countdown of the top 100 here. And the colors, I mean, I haven't seen it, but from what I've seen of the bits of it that they talk about, the colors are just amazing. I mean, it's supposed to be gory. But there was a quote from Eli Roth that says, he puts the gorgeous into gory, because the colors are just amazing. The red are so reds. And isn't she a ballerina or something?
Yeah, so it's about this I think she's an American girl in it, and she goes to this ballet school in Germany. And basically this whole school is essentially a cover for a coven of witches.
Okay.
So
as it normally is.
Yeah, as you do. So yeah, she just wanders into this kind of this strange school where lots of these murders are happening. It's just a really kind of visual film because there's so many colors in it.
Yeah, the colors are stunning. No, I will watch it at some point. I mean,
it is bloody, but I think with a lot of these Italian films, it was almost so over the top. It's not like some American films where it's, they're trying to do it to make you kind of a bit squeamish, like
do you think, is it like almost so over the top that it's quite funny in a really disturbing
in a very sort of macabre
you know what I mean?
Yeah because the blood and almost borders on orange, and there's just lots of really over the top death scenes in it.
Yeah.
So I mean, the intro to Suspiria is like one of the best horror intros there's been, because it all culminates in this one kind of outlandish death scene.
Sure. And I remember hearing that the director loosely based it on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If you think about it, like the the Disney cartoon, with the way they do the colors and the way they represent her in their clothes. And actually, if you look very closely, you can see kind of, I mean, obviously there's no dwarfs or whatever, but like it's very fairy tale dreamy like.
Yeah.
And she's so kind of like innocent, and she's like the protagonist, that she's basically kind of like the Snow White figure put into this awful world of you just of gore and horror and death everywhere. So yeah, that's also really interesting. Was there anything else that stood out for you about, is it Suspiria?
Yeah, Suspiria. Yeah.
Suspiria.
So yeah, it's just like with horror films, I think you can push the limits a little bit more of logic. So it doesn't always necessarily have to make sense. So if a room is like unnaturally red or blue and all these colors are just really striking, it kind of makes sense for that film itself. Like you say, it's like almost like a fairy tale in places. So
which is quite unusual for a horror film, isn't it? I mean, I don't think Hollywood would come up with that concept. Well, they wouldn't now, but at the time, it's very original, I think, for something like that to have come out. Did it take a long time to sort of develop a kind of a cult following?
I would say probably about a decade or so. I mean, they did prove quite popular,
right?
Kind of certain cinemas across Europe and America. Because back then you had so many different cinemas, and they had different specialities, and Grindhouse, which is like basically B movies, were very popular. So that would include things like Italian horror and stuff like that.
Sure.
But then VHS came along, and that really kind of boosted the popularity of all these kind of films.
Do you have any other favorite foreign films you want to talk about?
Yeah,
I have a few as well, so I can talk about them.
Okay, yeah. Let's. Do you want to give a suggestion?
So you said one of them, Amelie. Another favorite one of mine is Ringu.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah,
that's just. And when I saw the American version, I refused to watch the American version, and I did in the end, and it actually wasn't that bad, considering they were trying to do it for the American audiences, but it just didn't work to the same impact as the Japanese original film did. The first time I saw the original, it was so weird that and so creepy. And it's not something I think American cinema will be able to come up with. I mean, it's done in such an unusual way. Like, the video when the first time when they see it, or whoever sees it, it's so random, but it's so eerie with those squeaky noises. And there's that, I mean, all I remember was there's a guy pointing with a towel over his head. And then I think there's like some caterpillars or worms or something. And then at the end, it cuts off with the well, because obviously we know what happens. Well, some of us know what happens.
Yeah.
He climbs out of it at the end. That's a spoiler, but I'm sure everyone knows by now. But yeah, it just really stood out to me. It's so unusual for a horror film to be presented that way, I think. I mean, what do you think? Was that one of your favorite films as well?
I do have some Japanese horror, yeah. I mean, that is one of them. It's just because they did these really kind of atmospheric and a bit strange films. And at that time, they also kind of had this preoccupation with, technology and things as well. So, I mean, I know it's outdated now, but the old idea of videotapes and things, but...
Well, that's the thing, isn't is that usually generally we watch the TV thinking it's safe because it's behind the screen. But that's what makes it so terrifying when she actually climbs out of the TV. They're like, no, you're not in your safe zone. and the phone being before and all that stuff. It's just, And the way she comes out of the TV is just so... Oh, it's so disturbing. I think I really struggled to sleep that night. I was like, I'm not watching the TV for a while.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, there was another good one as well, called
Audition.
Pulse. Audition I love as well. Pulse is sort of similar to Ringu.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on the internet though, so there's like these internet sites that people watch, and then they end up getting haunted through that. So as opposed to the videotape,
sure,
it's through the internet, and obviously this was when the internet was quite new. But that's another similar one where it's just really kind of creepy
and based on technology, I guess.
And people end up sort of killing themselves because of these internet signals that they've been watching.
I have a little confession. I've heard and I've seen really nasty bits of Audition, not the nastiest pieces. And I know of it because it was in like the top 100 scariest moments.
Yeah.
So you have all these film critics talking about it. That's how I know about it.
Yeah.
And I did try watch it, but the problem I found was it's very, very slow paced to begin with.
Because I think what happens is I literally just covered this about a week ago on the website I write for. So I actually did cover Audition. It kind of starts like this weird, almost like a romantic comedy, because you got this executive who's a bit lonely because his wife died, and he sets up basically a fake movie to audition potential wives.
I know. Yeah, because isn't his friend like a producer or something? He said, "Why? Yes, set up this do a fake audition, and then you can meet women that way and pick out someone that way."
Yeah. So obviously, then he falls in love with this woman.
He's a complete nutter.
Yeah. So the more the more we see of her, the more we kind of sense that there's something not quite right.
Well, that's it. Is that she comes across in the original? I mean, from what I see, she comes across as so like delicate. She's so childlike and innocent. And then you cut to a scene. This is a scene I've seen, one of the scenes where he rings her to tell her, congratulations or whatever. And while the phone's ringing, she's just basically kneeling on the floor with her hair covering her face.
Yeah.
Just like that. And there's this bag in the background. And then all of a sudden this bag starts rolling around. And you're like, what the hell is going on? And you find out that there's this guy that she's been torturing, who she's tied up into the bag, and she's basically amputated his, was it the legs and arms or something? And she's
something like that, yeah.
And then she pukes into a bowl and he eats it. And it was just like, that's probably about the maximum I got. But I know at the very end, the whole point of it being very slow and why I think it didn't do so well was because it was so slow, but then it builds up. And at the end, it's just like the tension is so unbreakable, because obviously she puts her gloves on and she's torturing him, and
she starts humming this little tune as well, and that gets really sort of creepy.
What stood out for you about that film?
I think it's this gift that they have in like East Asian cinema, particularly Korea and Japan, is that a film can be going one direction and then suddenly flip to something else.
Yeah.
So it was just that flip where it was getting progressively weirder, and then right at sort of towards the end, when it gets really sort of gruesome and violent, it's one of those films. It definitely does stick with you once you've seen it.
Well, I guess it's so if for first time viewer, you wouldn't know what to expect, would you? Whereas I have
No.
a little confession. When I saw Ringu, I knew someone who'd watched it, and it was in that top horror countdown. So I knew how it would end, which kind of gives it away. But I think if you'd never seen or heard of it, or heard or any of the press or anything like that, then you would be thinking and feeling, this is creeping me out. It's very unsettling, and you wouldn't
Yeah.
understand why until you got to the end. And I think by the end of it, I think I'd just be a nervous wreck, you know. I wouldn't be able to focus. It would traumatize me, I think.
Yeah,
But
it's very, even for me, and I've seen a lot of horror films, that the end is very gruesome.
really, but don't give it away.
No.
What trying to think of other foreign films. Obviously Parasite, we spoke about loosely the last time. I thought Parasite was amazing. And that, funny enough, that was the first foreign film to win at the Oscars, which kind of says a lot about mainstream Hollywood films, I think, now. You know,
Yeah.
there's all this really good independent stuff going on around the world, and Hollywood's become basically like a kind of merchandise thing where they just keep turning out more and more films, I think, because they know they're guaranteed to get money back. So the problem is, when people are paying every time, they'll keep making them, won't they? And they'll stop
Yeah.
focusing less on, other kinds of sort of independent indie style filmmaking. And I think in the 90s, there was a bit more of a range in world cinema and all sorts of other genres. And now it's just become really, I mean, I can't stand the cinema anymore, to be honest, unless it was something I really want to see. Um,
Yeah.
it's very hard to find a good film to that leaves you thinking. I mean, it's like art, isn't it? So art should be what do you call it? There's a word for it. It should make you feel and think something afterwards.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of the films now in Hollywood are becoming a bit more disposable. So
Mm,
they just want to fill a gap in like July. And then if it's sort of made $1 billion by August, they're quite happy. So they're not
yeah,
too concerned if people remember the film in sort of 5, 10 years.
no,
Um, yeah, I think it's starting to get a little bit better again, thanks to things like Parasite,
yeah.
because people will actually go and see these films if they have the option to do it. But yeah, the studios are still a bit preoccupied with Marvel and Disney and things like that.
Well, I guess that's what brings in the most money, doesn't it? I mean, it's a huge
Yeah,
gamble to take um, to finance a low independent film when you don't know how it's going to come out.
yeah. So I mean, compared to the 90s, there was a bit of an indie boom. So,
Mm,
like Tarantino was part of that. So he came from independent cinema.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, hopefully, we'll see a few more indie directors coming through.
And actually, it's funny that you mentioned Tarantino, because he's like a huge film nerd, isn't he? Originally, I
Yeah,
mean, he didn't go to film school. He basically he worked in a video shop,
yeah.
and that
Well, he says
was.
that was his film school.
Do you reckon? Do you reckon
Yeah,
he did more? I mean, he knows so much. He's like an encyclopedia of film.
yeah,
And that's why he references so many films. And this was going to bring me on to Hong Kong cinema, because he references quite a lot of Hong Kong cinema, doesn't
oh
he?
yeah,
Like,
definitely. And then
um,
just on one point, he champions quite a lot of world cinema as well. So he's put his name behind a few films over the years just so they can get a good release in America.
oh,
So
really?
yeah, he's been quite good on that front in terms of championing foreign cinema. Something like
I mean,
Chungking Express, he was,
Chunkin
yeah,
Express. Yeah, I was going to talk about that with you as well, so we can talk about that. Because my father's Chinese and your wife's Chinese, so maybe you've also been exposed more to Chinese cinema as well. So, because when I was growing up, my dad was always renting out like Hong Kong films, like the weirdest films, like jumping up and down vampires. Like Chinese vampires aren't the same as Western vampires. You ever seen them? They jump up and down. They're very strange looking. But for them, that's terrifying. But yeah, there was, I mean, obviously the biggest thing we can talk about comparing, I can't remember, was it City on Fire or Rings of Fire? And everyone says
City on Fire, that was a good one, So that was the one for Reservoir Dogs, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there was a whole big argument was if it's homage or if it's plagiarism. Because it's literally the whole plot of this is exactly the same film. It's an undercover cop that goes in to obviously bust this bunch of guys. And there's a massive shootout at the end. So it's like, it's literally exactly the same as Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah. I guess you can sort of get away with it because people weren't particularly aware outside of Hong Kong and China at the time of City on Fire. But I mean, I love that era of sort of action films and gangster films.
I mean, it's been a while. I remember watching it because I studied when I was a teenager. I did a 2-year BTEC National Media Studies course. And part of the whole course was film theory. There was a module on film theory and film studies. So we had a lot of lectures. One more time, film theory and film practice.
Yeah.
So we were basically inundated with all this stuff. And we had one term of foreign cinema, and we were all at the beginning. Our teacher was like, okay, so let's vote on what exactly we're going to watch. French foreign cinema. And in the end, we came up with Hong Kong foreign cinema, which was basically so easy for me because my dad was always taking out these films from Hong Kong. I remember when I was a kid, I was always watching Jackie Chan films. What was it? The one where he's drunken boxing, the famous one.
Yeah, Drunken Master.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. And it's really, that one stands out the most. Yeah, but I don't know what other Hong Kong, and obviously the other Hong Kong films that stood out was Chungking Express, which is another one that heavily influenced Tarantino. And there is actually a video of him, basically giving a big review about it. Like he knows everything about it. And I remember watching Chungking Express for the first time when I was doing my BTEC Media Studies course as part of the I think it was for the foreign cinema assignment that we had to do, or it was avant-garde, because it's also quite avant-garde, isn't it? It's very experimental.
In places it is. He was very experimental with the camera, and different sort of shutter speeds and frame rates. So it's almost dreamlike in places.
Because didn't he do it at the same time? He was making it at the same time while I was doing like a sort of like a big blockbuster, I think, or kind of like a mainstream film. And I think he was getting kind of tired of following like, a certain kind of narrative.
Yeah, because I think he was doing a big sort of kung fu epic at the time, but I think it was struggled to get released for quite a few years afterwards.
And what's funny, because we were talking about Chungking Express, is that my family and I we reviewed it. We had a big chat about it because we did a bit of film lovers chat. So every week we would pick a film, one of us pick a film, and then we'd all have to watch it. And on a Sunday, we'd all Zoom each other and discuss it and say basically at the end what we thought of it and how much we gave it out of 10. And with Chungking Express, it's funny. It's like some of us liked it, and some of us found it not unsettling, but because it sort of just cuts off all of a sudden and goes on to a completely different person and story. Do you know what I mean? But then you think about it, that actually, well, life is really like that. You do come across, you do meet people that you'll only meet within a space of time, and then you'll never see them again. Do you know what I mean? And then they go off. And I always find it quite interesting that after you've met someone and you never seen them again for some reason or other, you do wonder, what happened to that person? Do you know what I mean? Which is kind of what the film leaves you thinking, like, what happens to this person? I mean, I don't know if that had the same kind of, if you had the same kind of feeling about that as well.
I mean, I didn't mind that side of it so much. I think it's definitely got that, and but I just like the whole energy of it, and it's quite, I guess it's quite a Western kind of film as well. So I think, you know, that's probably, if you're going to watch one Kar Wai film, I think that's probably a good one to start with, because it's quite, you know, inspired by sort of Western cinema as well.
And I can imagine that must have heavily influenced a lot of new filmmakers at the time.
Yeah, I think it did, yeah.
Or film students, definitely. It's one of those ones that film students would all watch because it's so like innovative and experimental. And like you said, it opens up with this fast-paced camera moving around, and you wouldn't see that. And it's like, what's going on? What's going on, kind of thing. But like, it's also really interesting because
it plays out a little bit like a music video sometimes as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also like, because like my dad's from Hong Kong and I grew up in Hong Kong also, that actually Hong Kong is really like that. It's very fast paced, it's buzzing, it's constantly moving. There's always people, there's always sights, there's always sounds and smells. And it's very good at capturing that environment, I find.
Yeah, it definitely does do that, yeah. But I mean, it's a great looking film as well.
And it's kind of gritty at times, isn't it? Yeah. Like the first bit. I think that's why the first time I watched it when I was a teenager, I was kind of a little bit upset because Takeshi Kanishiro was in it, and I thought, who's this good-looking guy? And then they stop showing him and they go on to somebody else, like, no, bring this guy back. Bring him back. But I just love the fact that he's a cop that falls completely head over heels in love, not knowing it's with a drug, you know, what do you call it, a drug lady or whatever. So he has no idea that she's selling drugs or whatever. So it's very. And the second story is your favorite person, Faye Wong, isn't it?
Yeah, I like, because she's a bit sort of. She's a little bit similar to Amelie, I guess, that she's quite I was going to say,
she tries to fix his life, doesn't she? And she goes into his apartment and does nice things and accidentally floods it. But yeah, she like cleans it up and stuff. But yeah, that's funny actually, because we were talking about that and we came to the same conclusion that it's kind of like Amelie as well, in that I think she's a lot more childlike than Amelie, actually. You know, she gets really kind of scared and screams and runs off and stuff like that. So,
but yeah, I like the quirkiness of the character. I think it's just, you know, an interesting selection of characters in the film.
Yeah. Is there anything? There's another foreign film that you might have seen, and I've never gotten around to it because I don't know if I have the courage to. It's a Brazilian film and it's a really well-known film called, City on Fire?
City of God?
City of God, that's it.
Yeah.
And I tell you why I can't watch it. Because I know it's real, basically, isn't it? It's these kids that grow up in the
it's sort of
Brazil and Rio de Janeiro, and
quite an intense,
really hard
film.
life. Yeah, and there's a scene. I've seen a clip of scene where one kid shoots another kid in the foot, And I'm just like, if it's going to be like this, it's going to be a lot worse. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's quite an intense film. I mean, it's really well shot as well. So it's kind of, there's a lot of handheld cameras, so there's a lot of energy, a bit like Chungking Express, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
A very
Isn't the
energetic
director,
camera.
wasn't it based loosely on his life as well? Didn't
It
he? I don't know
it
if
wouldn't
he grew up.
surprise me, yeah.
I think he might have based it kind of on his experiences that he may have grown up at some point living in a sewage system or whatever, which is horrible. I mean, they're kids, you know what I mean? But then you got this whole big, it's Rio de Janeiro, isn't it? Which is really
Yeah.
rough. And the police don't even go into there because it's so, I don't know what the word is, not contaminated, but it's so dangerous. And it's so infiltrated with drugs, etc. It's just like it's a well-known
Yeah.
place to not venture into, basically.
Because
Even
it's
they
sort of
know.
like on it, yeah, it's been sort of ghettoized, basically, sort of pushed to the side. So
Yeah,
almost like a sort of shanty town. So it's just a bit lawless, and then it's an intense film, so it's kind of got um just a lot of really kind of harrowing scenes, but it's
yeah.
also a little bit of childlike innocence through the film as well,
Mm,
when they're away from the kind of the gritty violence, and they get those moments where they can just sort of be a kid.
sure. But I guess you don't see much of that. It's quite sad because you
Yeah,
realize that they're having to grow up a lot faster than they
yeah,
should be, rather than enjoying their childhood. Does
and
that make sense?
they almost get themselves into with certain gangs as a means of survival, really. So
And protection.
yeah,
Yeah. And I guess if that's the only thing you know, do you know what I mean?
yeah.
You wouldn't know any better. So for them, that's normal. So they wouldn't be thinking the grass is green on the other side because they don't know.
Well, yeah,
Um,
exactly, yeah.
so that's why I find I can't get round to watching it because I know it really happens, and that really disturbs me. I think, but obviously that's the whole point of the film.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely no glamorizing in it, so it is
No.
quite blunt. But I mean, I watched it not long after it came out, and I haven't watched it since. So I guess it's a great film, but I guess that's kind of it is intense. So it's probably one of those films that people would watch maybe once or twice,
Yeah, but
not
I was going to say,
revisit.
don't you find that sometimes when you check in with a film that you haven't seen in a long time, um, that you come back thinking differently about it, or you pick up, like you said, you pick up something different about it. So if
Yeah,
I hadn't seen, I mean, say Amelie came out when I was a teenager, which it wasn't, it was when I was in my early 20s. Say if I'd seen it when I was a teenager and then seen it again as like now, I would have definitely come away thinking and feeling a bit differently about it, if that makes sense.
yeah, I think so. I mean, sometimes you just pick up different things when you watch it, or something clicks that maybe you didn't feel the first time,
Mm.
which I found
But
with a few sort of films that I've watched over the years.
that I've done that.
Yeah.
What is there anything else? Because we were talking about Tarantino in a bit a while ago, and we were saying how he references a lot of, especially Hong Kong cinema, because I know he's really big on Hong Kong cinema. So there was the Chunkin Express. I mean, I don't think he's referenced that. He's definitely referenced. Is it City on Fire?
Yeah, and he referenced a lot of John Woo films as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, so not quite as directly as City on Fire. There was another one, Better Tomorrow 2,
Mm.
which there's certain elements of that in Reservoir Dogs as well, or Better
The
Tomorrow
John
1
Woo's
and
from
2.
Hong Kong, isn't he,
Yeah,
originally? Because I think, I mean, he obviously started off as a very like new, struggling filmmaker in Hong Kong and developed a name for himself there.
yeah,
And then over the years, as he got older, Hollywood started noticing him, and then he started going to those big mainstream films, like, was it a Face Off and stuff like that?
Face Off, yeah.
With Nicolas Cage and John Travolta and stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, I love all his gangster work. So all his early kind of gangster films like Hardboiled.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, Hardboiled is one of those which I still love as an action film, because it's basically the old school way that they used to do it, was everything was done in camera. So there would be no CGI at all. And they would have stuntmen doing just absolutely crazy things.
Yeah.
And they'd, you know, rig up buildings and just blow them apart. And
well, you hear about when, I mean, when Jackie Chan was a lot younger, and obviously he started out in Hong Kong, his very first film, he had a cameo appearance fighting Bruce Lee.
Yeah. I can't remember the name. Enter the Dragon, yeah.
Oh, was it Enter the Dragon?
It was, yeah.
And he was really young, and he was the bad guy in that, and obviously he lost because it's Bruce Lee, right? But then, yeah, he sort of developed a reputation in Hong Kong, and then it sort of picked up from there. But he was always doing those incredible, dangerously horrific stunts that basically he was always hurting himself. I mean, at one point he fell off a scaffolding or something, and he got concussion and stuff. So it's
he tended to get injured almost every film. I mean, there was one film he did where they did worry he'd broken his neck. So
that was it. Yeah,
very lucky that he didn't die.
I mean, I'm sure now that he's going to be in his 60s now. He wouldn't be able to do. Does he still do some of the stunts? I'd imagine he won't be able to do everything now.
No, I
mean he's still in phenomenal shape.
He still does a bit, yeah, and he's still in good shape. But I think just generally, just throughout the world, that there's a lot more safety measures now and a lot more restrictions. So that kind of era that Jackie Chan really kind of pioneered.
Yeah,
just the craziness of the stunts that they used to do, just loading action, because they used to spend 6 months to a year shooting a film.
Really?
And most of that time would be to shoot the action. Whereas, nowadays in Hollywood, if you have a film that shoots over maybe a month, they might spend, 1 week of that shooting action. So yeah, they just used to spend so much time just really kind of getting everything as they wanted it, and just throwing stuntmen around to do crazy things. There's a lot more safety now.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you should say that. I mean, I know this is going off in a tangent, so I'll quickly go into it, and then we can go back on course again. There was a stunt woman, and she was really injured on, what was it? That film, Mila Jovovich.
Yeah,
English woman.
I think, Resident Evil.
Yes.
I think
Did you hear about this?
Yeah, she lost an arm.
The poor woman. I think she lost her arm, or she had to have her arm amputated. Her whole spine was ruined.
Yeah.
And she's trying to sue the the company or whatever.
Yeah, because I think the safety on it wasn't particularly great, apparently. So
was it not?
No.
Because they tell her a load of crap to begin with when she signed the contract, that she would be covered if anything happened, and and now that she's asking for compensation, they're not giving it to her.
Well, I think I wouldn't know too much, but it's it wouldn't surprise me.
No,
I think a lot changed in Hollywood as well after Brandon Lee. So after he died, I mean, because that was a fairly simple kind of stunt that went wrong.
Well, that was just a very tragic accident, wasn't it? There was just it was a fake bullet or something, or somebody replaced it with a real bullet. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's a little bit sketchy what people say about the whole thing, but
like one of those things. Another thing, because the actor who shot him on the film, he really struggled afterwards. He said he never get over it.
No, I don't think he did, because he didn't really do a lot after that film either.
No, he was in 24.
Yeah,
first season, And he always played, and I think he did have a cameo, not a cameo, but a little appearance in Seven at one point. But I mean, when he did, he was always playing the bad guys because he had such a good face for that.
Yeah.
So I guess Hollywood typecasted him. But I can't remember his name. I should look him up. What was his name? Anyway, so I was going
to something like that.
Yeah, but we were
Yeah.
talking. What were we talking about before I went off tangent? I was going to say we can't talk about Hong Kong films and not mention Bruce Lee.
Well, no, not
Do you know what I mean? I mean, all those films originally, when he started out in Hong Kong, they were obviously done in Chinese. And then he developed a cult following and all that kind of stuff. But what were your favorite Bruce Lee films?
I think probably, so there was Way of the Dragon. That's the one where he fights Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
And then
He was also his student. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. I know.
Yeah, he was his student.
Yeah, I know Steve McQueen was at one point as well, I think.
Yes, Chuck Norris was one of his students, and of course he's going to get, thrashed. But yeah, Bruce Lee was his Sifu. So yeah, there you go. That's something you didn't know. So what were you going to say? Way of the Dragon. What was the one where he fights the guy with the claw hands and he goes, "You have offended my people," and you've offended that one. And he's going for a maze.
Yeah, that's Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon.
So I think that is his best one. That's almost like a crossover, that one. So it's sort of Hong Kong, but there was also some American backing to it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and when did they start doing those terrible? When did they? I mean, it was notorious, wasn't it, for when they showed it in America and they were dubbing over into English. Those kung fu films, and they were dubbing into English, and it was so bad.
Yeah, I think a lot of them probably came around after Bruce Lee because there was this kind of fascination after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And didn't that start up? What was that thing with David Carradine? There was a whole big hoo-ha. That was it. Yeah. And there was a whole big hoo-ha because the TV series, they wanted Bruce Lee originally, didn't they?
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it.
Yeah, Bruce was the one who was sort of started developing it and was kind of like half promised the role. And then it ended up going to... because by that point, the producers sort of start pitching to networks, and then the networks were probably the ones that came back and said, "No, we need like a white lead."
Yeah, which must have caused a big controversy, I'd imagine.
At the time, I don't think David Carradine. I don't think he knew kung fu at the time. I think he took it up, just after he sort of got the role.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I assumed that he was like a sort of a master already.
No, I think he learned it for the role or sort of afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did end up doing martial arts, but yeah, I think it was because of the TV show.
Is there any other foreign films that you want to talk about?
Yes.
I can't think of any.
Yeah, I do like quite a lot of European films as well, like North European. So like Let the Right One In.
I don't know that one.
So that is like that's a vampire film.
Okay.
It's a really kind of interesting twist on the genre.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this young boy who's getting bullied, and he lives kind of alone with his mum, and his parents have split up. So he's quite an isolated, introverted kid. And then this girl moves into his block, and they kind of sort of strike up a friendship. But she turns out to be a vampire.
Oh.
So it sort of starts from there. It's this kind of
a weird love story between vampires.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. It's like crosses horror and sort of drama. But it's a really good film.
There's another film I wanted to talk to you about. Dogtooth and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And I tell you why, because in 2010, there was a short period of time for about 4 or 5 months maybe, where I worked in a cinema before I got myself sorted out. And they were showing The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah.
The original one, the Swedish version.
I love that one, yeah.
And at one point they showed Dogtooth as well. And I can't remember if I actually sat through and watched The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but I do remember, because we had to do screen checks every half an hour just to check everything was okay. There was no noise or anything, you know, people messing around or whatever, or filming. Yeah. And I walked in on the most horrendous, there's obviously worse, but on a really bad rape scene. And I walked out going, I don't know what I've just seen. I don't know what I've just seen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like with Swedish films and sort of all around the Nordic areas, they're not afraid to sort of
go into places. Yeah.
But I kind of like about the films that they're very intense.
And they don't hold back.
Yeah, and there's a lot of repression in the films as well. So
yeah, you get that sense.
That are kind of, you know, there's lots going on inside their head.
Let's quickly go on to Dogtooth because we've got a few more minutes left. Did you ever get around to watching Dogtooth?
I haven't, but I've been meaning to go back because I like the director.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's actually I'm going to watch The Lobster. Because it's the same director, isn't it?
Yeah, and The Favourite as well.
And didn't he do the other one of Nicole Kidman and Colin Farrell?
Yeah, The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like his vision. But the thing is, right, I will watch Dogtooth. But I remember seeing bits of that and thinking, this is weird. And my friend went to see it. He was also working at cinema, but it was his day off. So he thought, I'll go watch it. And at the end of the film, I went in just to check if the auditorium was okay. And he came out, I was like, you all right, Aidan? And he was, I don't know what I've just seen. And he walked out completely stunted, like he had no idea what he just sat for and watched. And when you watch the trailer for that film, it's really disturbing. And it was loosely based on, at the time, do you remember that horrific story about Joseph Fritz, who had basically had his daughter living in the basement, and they said that she'd run away from home and all, and he was doing all kinds, he was basically raping her, and he fathered her children and all this kind of stuff. So it's loosely based on that this father is like brainwashing and controlling his family to stay in the home compound. And he convinces them that the cat is the one that murdered their brother. But you know what? If you think about it, if it's your father, you wouldn't know any better, would you? So
you'd take the word as gospel, wouldn't you? So you'd think he was telling the truth.
Exactly. You wouldn't think he's this complete misogynist, nasty piece of work. So I've got to watch it. I don't know if you never got round to it, did you?
No, not yet, but I've been meaning to.
Yeah, we'll get around and watch it. We'll talk about it privately. Another film I want to quickly talk to you about, Tom, because I have a little bone of you, is once I said, can you give me a good Korean film to watch? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
And you said, The Handmaiden. That's a good film. So I watched The Handmaiden with my sister on Netflix.
I should have probably said, don't watch it with family members.
And we were sitting there watching, and it did say in the review, highly erotic, but I didn't think it would be that erotic. And we were sitting there and squirming, and I'm like, can we forward this bit? It was just, when you're sitting with a family member, it's not the best film to watch.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to live this down, am I?
You're not.
No, I'll never forget that one.
So next time, if you
yeah.
recommend a film, tell me to watch it, but if I can watch it with someone or not with someone.
I'll have to sort of forward you the BBFC reviews guide, maybe the ratings
Or the
of each
Rotten
film.
Tomatoes.
Yeah, just there's a site called Mumsnet, which looks at every film and then tells you what's in it in terms of what might scare children and things like that. So maybe I can do one of those guides. But I mean, aside from all that, I did really like
was
the
sitting there and I was saying, my friend Tom recommended this, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, this is the worst thing to be watching with my sister.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, you live and learn, don't you?
Yeah, especially if I'm recommending Korean films, because
Yes,
they can sometimes be a bit extreme.
Anyway, I think we better end it there. Tom, is there anything you want to say to sign off with, or anything you want to talk about quickly? We've got about 2 minutes left.
No, that's okay. I apologize for recommending The Handmaiden.
All right. Do you want to finish up by saying anything else? Signing off?
I had a lot of good fun. So yeah, that was good.
It's amazing how an hour goes so quickly, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think we could do like another hour probably on foreign films.
That's it. Is that, like we said, we'll keep it short, but it's impossible because we just both like to talk so much. So much. So it's really hard to do, especially when we go on a roll.
Yeah, well, it's okay.
We're enjoying
part
it.
3 at some point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I better sign off then. So from next week, guys, we'll be doing, not from next week, I've got another person lined up who's a filmmaker who I'll be talking to very soon in the next episode. So say bye for now, Tom, and at some point he'll be back again. Bye, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.